So this room, this house, is 4 years in the making, which sounds crazy, but we actually found the property in 2019, tried to get it, they took it off the market, finally got it in 2020, started renovation. It's almost 4 years from the day of when we first saw it that we are actually talking about the living room reveal, which is today. Used to be like you'd walk into a house and then right to the left was like your living room, and it was like a sofa and 2 chairs, very contained. Then you go down the hallway and you go to the kitchen or whatever. A room like this, our living room, I mean, maybe I'm just feeling sorry for myself, but it was more complicated design because it's the middle of the house, so it's like this pass-through space. So the entry is there, the sunroom is there, the backyard is there with these doors that open up, the kitchen is there, the family room is there, the pantry is there, and there's the stairs upstairs are there. So anyway, you have to create this flow, and it's just really hard to figure out. Additionally, we have 2 kids and 2 pups, and for us, every room is a family room. So even though this is our more formal living room, I did want it to feel really practical and durable and comfortable, and like a place where everybody could, you know, feel like they can sit on every single piece of furniture. And doing that is a lot harder than it sounds. When we first found this house, the living room was huge and really, really dark. It had so much potential, but like when you walked in, it was very heavy. And it both with natural light, and the walls were burgundy, the ceiling was a really dark stain, and it felt like a big cave. And while we love the vintage windows, they were so pretty, there just wasn't enough light, and we knew that there was such opportunity to blow out this wall and have it open to the backyard. So there were 2 things that we knew we wanted to keep and work with. One was the ceiling, obviously. It's a really pretty exposed, like, you know, beam and tongue and groove ceiling. We knew we wanted to lighten it up, but architecturally it was incredible. And then the fireplace, when I first walked in, I was like, this is a real big fireplace. And then everybody reminded me, this is a real big room. So it actually is scaled perfectly to the room. So we kept the fireplace and the ceiling. So at the beginning stage of the design, it was really just about reconfiguring the house, like figuring out what rooms are where and how we walk through and live through the space. We were in Lake Arrowhead while we were demoing and renovating, and Archiform was up here. So we would meet on Zoom for 3 hours every Sunday and do all the drawings. And we would watch them just reconfigure and relay out this entire house, which was very exciting. It's not like we wanted this crazy open concept, but we did want the kitchen and the living room to just be more connected and to have it be more open. Our first goal was to blow out the wall of the original kitchen, not only to move the kitchen into the living room, but also to bring all that natural light into the living room. This room had no natural light. So that was kind of like goal number 1, is to open it up, bring in that light. We bought this house for the property. I mean, the property is incredible. And so we also knew that we wanted to make sure the living room, which is again, more of a family room, was easy access to the outside. So the wall right here behind me, it was just a wall. It had a big bookcase, and we knew immediately we wanted to make that a big scenic door, just like a way that like in the summers, we could just leave the windows or the doors open and the kids could run in and out and in and out. Then we got a little bit greedy and decided to add a sunroom. It's such a beautiful room, but it did mean that we had to re-engineer some stuff, and we had to get rid of that window, create an opening. I made it more of a thing. I'm so glad I did it, but that was, I think, one of the bigger architectural changes to the house that we made. That it wasn't easy, but it was definitely worth it. So once we came up with the final floor plan, and we're like, okay, we know how we're gonna use this space. We knew so much about it, but we didn't know still how to lay it out. And I was like, we'll just think about that later. It'll be so easy. It's just a room. I know how to decorate a room. So we kind of ignored that, and we got to the actual renovation part. Y'all, there's like different phases of joy in a renovation, and like at the beginning when you have all this possibility, this is like it's like you're really high on the excitement scale, and then when you see demo, like that's kind of exciting, and then it's just months and months and months of really not a lot of visual work happening, because it's the electrical, it's the plumbing, it's the mechanical, it's all the stuff behind the walls. So I would say the next 6 months was demo, framing, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, and just us waiting for permits, all that kind of stuff. Windows and doors. So after demo, framing, all the mechanical, it was time to actually start installing do more of the carpentry. So the windows and the doors came in. That's a very exciting day. We worked with Sierra Pacific, and their windows that we chose are these really beautiful white oak on the inside, aluminum clad on the outside, and the scenic doors, I mean, they just make such a massive difference in the space. So they cut a huge hole, and they went to go install the biggest doors ever. Months later, it was time to drywall. Now, the drywall phase, I mean, it sounds so boring, and it takes a lot longer than you think. Our whole house took about a month, by the way, to drywall. But the drywall phase is one of those another peaks in the joy of remodeling, because you walk in and all of a sudden it went from a total construction zone to like white walls everywhere and walls everywhere, right? So you can actually see the rooms versus just seeing framing. So drywall is I have a real place in my heart for drywall. Now it's time for like the hard finishes. So the flooring, the lighting, the ceiling, anything that is stuck to the walls, essentially. So the flooring, we worked with Xena Forestry. They're incredible. They're outside of Portland, and we found this beautiful native white oak that was milled here by a family, and it's just like real good energy wood. So that went throughout the first floor on the ground. So then the Archiform team, Jamie and Taylor, they started paneling the walls. So this is where they do the window trim, the door trim, all the paneling. And we did it in this paint grade poplar, and it looked so pretty going up. It was just so nice to have that warmth of the wood. So then it was time to paint, and I chose a white that at times I have said publicly I think might be a little bit too crisp, but then every now and again I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful because it's just so bright. But we walked in and all of a sudden the space, I mean, it is so transformed from when we first saw it. Lighting this room was a little bit of a challenge because the ceiling is, it's a open beamed ceiling, which means that trying to hide conduit for a lot of ceiling lights was possible, but just wasn't gonna look as good. So we really leaned into sconces here, and we worked with Rejuvenation, which is a Portland-based company, and they actually assemble a lot here in their factory, which I love. It just makes me feel good that it's something that was made 2 miles away and now is in my home, and I know the people, they're wonderful people. Anyway, so I chose these very classic timeless sconces, single in places, doubles in other, and then the overhead light, we went with something more contemporary and kind of cool and modern because it's a farm, but also it's us, so we wanted to still feel have that youthfulness in here. August 2022 is move-in day, and so that's 3 years from when we found the property, 2 years from when we started renovating, and 1 year ago. We were desperate to move in. The renovation was not done. We didn't care. We were like, we are living here. So when you move in, everything feels all fresh, right? It's full of possibility and potential, and it really was. My dopamine was skyrocket, so high. But then technically, or theoretically, that's when all the fun should start, right? All the decorating and styling, the stuff that I can do with my eyes closed. Some rooms totally came together so fast. Other rooms, this one, did not. So we moved in with temporary furniture. We had just leftovers from old houses and projects, knowing that they weren't gonna work, but this was one of the smarter things I did. Is we lived with it for months and months and months and months and months to really see how we lived in this room. But it didn't, clarity did not come You know, like, I honestly feel like there's just so many ways to skin a cat that, like, it really is just, it's a personal preference at a certain point. And at one day, I think my team was up here and they're like, why don't you do 2 matching sofas? And I was like, two matching sofas. To me, that sounded so formal. Just like, that's what like formal people do, you know? But then I was like sitting in here, I was like, oh, that would be the simplest solution. It would be so, if they're comfortable, they would create so much seating area, and it would also be really easy for your eye to understand. So I'm not asking for pity by any means, but sometimes having a too big living room is weird, because it's like, do you have just huge furniture? And like, it's not like I need like a game table, you know what I mean? It's like if you look in magazines, all these huge living rooms, they had like 3 different conversation areas in the same room, and we didn't want that. So it was really hard to figure out how to lay it out. It's a big room, so we ultimately created zones, which I think is what a lot of readers suggested. But later they're like, we told you to do zones. I was like, you did. So we have a few different zones. Right now, I'm in the conversation zone, and we actually pushed the 2 sofas closer together, and it looked better. I didn't think it would. I thought we would need a huge sofa here, a love seat here, 2 chairs there, and kind of like spread out and really use the space. But once we pushed the conversation area smaller and in, it just felt so much better. So the whole room flows so much better. It gets a ton of usage. We've checked all of our functional boxes that we need, and it just feels well designed and appropriate now. The dining nook is just for the family of 4, and originally I had really designed it, and I had this whole beautiful like floating white oak joinery situation. I was like, what if we just did the most basic thing possible? Not that I could do it, but I called Jamie from Archiform, and I was like, we have leftover paneling. It's like this big, it's very small. Can you just build a box? I've seen people on Instagram do it all the time. And he was just like, okay, lady. And I was like, no, I'm serious. Here, look what Angela Rose did. She just built it herself. And anyway, he just built boxes. He paneled it. It took 2 days, so affordable. And then we ended up putting these umbrella cushions on top, because I like comfort, but I also like durability. And that little nook, I'm telling you, it turned out so much cuter than I ever envisioned it would. If I'm gonna invest in a table, I didn't want something super trendy. I didn't want something that you know, maybe in 5 years was gonna fall apart or whatever. So I commissioned this live edge table from 2 makers in town. Shout out to Pearl and to Billy the blacksmith. And over 6 weeks, we designed this coffee table, and I love it. To me, it feels classic. For the window treatments, technically we didn't need a lot of privacy because we're kind of out in the country, but window treatments just make windows, especially windows that are this traditional, feel more finished. So we worked with Decor Review on these big drapes, which are so pretty, and they're a really neutral tone that like sometimes looks a little gray, sometimes a little taupe in a good way. And then so we matched the drapes with the Roman shade on one of the double hungs, but then flanking the huge scenic doors, we had these 2 double hungs that had very deep sills because of the track of the scenic doors. So it made their sills be about a foot deep, and to me it seemed like a moment to do an opportunity to do something special. So I've been collecting vintage Japanese boro plaid fabric, just like yardage, for years, and I have a pretty robust collection. So I've been trying to figure out like where I can put that throughout the whole house. Like every day I'm like, should I put it here? So I've thought about reupholstering sofas in them, beds in them, curtains, and finally here we were like, oh, let's just hang a simple panel. When the light comes through, it's incredible. It screams me, and it's probably my favorite moment in the whole room, honestly. I try not to have like really firm rules, because I think when it comes to creativity and design, it's like you just do whatever you want to. However, I have found for myself that if I don't try and have a cohesive color palette, that my home can kind of look like a thrift store. And it's because I collect so much vintage that if I don't keep the color palette really tight, it can just look a little like just too much, you know, and really messy. So for me, I like to have a strict color palette, and typically it's blues, greens, whites, neutrals, so grays, blacks, whites, golds. I mean, I do have other colors that I mix in, but those are the colors that I'm like, okay, try not to stray too far away from this, because this will give you a very cohesive looking room. So the mantle, it's a big mantle, and I mean, I could probably, like, I could put a billion things on that mantle. So instead, I anchored it with one big painting I've had forever that I love, has a billion different blues and blacks in it, and then I combined it with a smaller, more simple piece, and it's a contemporary artist named Marilyn Joyce out of Portland, who I love. And then I've been collecting these like wood sculptures for a long time over time. So I tried to keep it simple. I added a really weird, tall little plant or tree, which I have no idea how to care for, and the whole thing just it did come together, because sometimes I struggle with mantles because they can be, you can do too much or do too little. All right, so with the major pieces done, and that's another huge like box checked, and so now it's down to styling, and that's really, I promise, I feel like I've said this before, I promise you that that's the stuff that like typically comes pretty easy for me, and I love doing it so much. So we're talking like the mantle, the coffee table, like every surface needs to have its, you know, needs to be addressed. The problem when you do that though, especially in a room this big, is 2 days before the shoot, I was styling out all these vignettes, and they individually looked really great. And then I would stand back in the kitchen and stare at the room, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on. So it's tricky, because you wanna style out every moment, but then collectively it can be too much. Ultimately, I ended up paring it back a lot, and I tried to keep each vignette to have the same elements, like they all have some blue, some green, some wood, and a hit of black. And to me, it gave me a formula I could work off of, and kind of kept it simple, because I can make things look really like overly eclectic at times, for sure. There were times when I thought, this isn't the room that I'm gonna love. And that's okay. And I was like, that's okay. I love the kitchen, I love the mudroom, I love our bathroom so much, sunroom. Maybe this isn't the room that I get to love. And I'm so happy to say that I love this room. And our kids love it, our dogs love it, our friends love it. And it does really feel like a family living room for our specific family. And I'm just really, really happy that it turned out so well. So y'all, this is our first foray. Well, I've been on YouTube for years, but we are actually considering a serious YouTube series. So what we would need from you, if you like it, and if you're like, oh, this is a fun video to watch, is like and subscribe, and then also just like share it with your friends. If you think that they're into design, or they would be into this style or renovation or whatever, just don't be afraid to share it, because obviously if this goes well, we will be able to continue to do them, and because I really, really enjoy it. Thanks guys.